Hello everybody out there in YouTube land. Today I'm going to be going through how to repair a cracked nylon gear in a toy. I've done this on several different toys, and this time I'm going to be working on a Model Power number 605 AT Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe steam engine from the early 90s. And what happened, the problem with it is, there's a small nylon gear inside there that rides off the motor. Rides off actually a gear that, well, there's a couple gears, but this is the one that actually ends up driving the wheels. And it was pressed onto this little metal shaft here. And what happened over the years, just from sitting, temperature changes or whatever, this gear has developed a hairline crack in it. So it becomes loose on that shaft and won't deliver the power to the wheels. It just spins on the shaft. So what I'm going to have to do is, I don't know if you can see it, but there is a very small, I can just barely see it with my naked eyes, a very small hairline crack right there on this gear. And the problem is, when I put it on the shaft, that crack spreads apart a little bit, and that'll give you a gap between two of the teeth, which will make the gear sort of jump. So that's why I don't want to just glue it onto that shaft. What I'm going to have to do is take and drill it out, drill the hole out a little bit larger so that it fits on that shaft loosely, and then glue it to the shaft with a super glue that I've found that works really well, and then it gets the thing running again. So that's what I'm going to be going through right now today, just in case. And this, this is just on this specific little engine, but they use these gears in a lot of toys. I did this same repair on this toy of my wife's, this crazy buggy. It's a little dune buggy that rides through an obstacle course and up ramps and stuff. And these two gears on the outside of it were cracked, and I had to do the exact same thing to those and put them back on there, and it's been working so far. So it seems to be a pretty good repair that works, and so that's what I'm going to be going through. Okay, now here comes the part where you got to be sort of careful. What I discovered is that this 7/64 drill bit fits in there just sort of loosely, and the 1/8, which is the next size up that I have, is kind of snug. So that's the hole I think I'm going to want. So what I'm going to do is take this 7/64 bit and just kind of work it around in there to enlarge the hole a little bit, and then jump up to the 1/8 inch bit. You don't want to try to go too big too quickly, or you're liable to split the gear completely in half, which could happen anyway. Okay, I've enlarged that a little bit. Let's see if it's still going to fit pretty tightly onto that shaft. Pretty sure, and it's still going to split apart as you put it on there, I think. That did seem to go on there nicer than I suspected. It's creating a gap when it goes on, so I do need to make that hole a little bit bigger. That's where the bigger bit comes in. Now this is the tricky part. And I'm just going to hold it with my fingers, that way I don't, I'm just real careful. This can get quite tricky. And I'm afraid of, I just don't want to crack the gear completely in two. Just gotta slow go. Run it around on there backwards a couple times and whatever, just get it to go in there smoothly. Try to keep from breaking the gear in half. And if it does break in half, it's not the end of the world, but I don't want it to. Because that crazy buggy, one of those gears on that one was actually in two pieces. And I was still able to get it to work. Okay, it seemed like that was success. Enlarging the hole. See, now it goes on there pretty easily, and it doesn't spread that apart really at all when I put that on there. So that I'll have the proper gap between the two teeth where the crack is. I want to press my lug. Come on. This is a tedious process. And I recommend you exercise extreme caution when you're doing that with a drill, that you don't accidentally scratch your fingers, because it's just a little bit tricky. Okay, now I have that pretty much drilled just about right. So now the next part is to glue it onto the shaft. Okay, now the glue that I'm going to be using to glue this on is actually the stuff called Q-Bond, and I got it on Amazon, and I've been really impressed with the way it's been working. It comes with 2 bottles of super glue and then 2 bottles of this powder. They're both basically the same thing. One's black and one's gray, and it's just a color thing, you know, color matching thing. But what you do, you sprinkle the powder on the joint where you're going to put it together, and then of course you know how super glue is, but anybody who's ever used it, it's real thin and it sort of has like a capillary action that it'll run into the joint, and this just gives it something, so it'll fill a void and just gives it something a little bit more to grab to. It makes a huge difference, I think, you know, other than just the old regular standard super glue that everybody's used to. Okay, now what you do, you take this powder and you sprinkle it on the area that you're going to glue first, and in my case it's just the area where the gear meets. In this case right here, it's this area, if you can see that, just where the gear meets the shaft, because that's where the glue is going to go, and all I'm trying to do is just hold the gear in place. I'm not really worrying about where it was cracked. It'll work its way into there anyway, and as long as the gear stays on the shaft, it should still work. So, you know, it'll go into that little crack anyway where it's cracked, because super glue, it has like a capillary action that it'll run into the joint. The only thing is I have to be really careful that I don't get it on the teeth, because I've done that before, and you just gotta pick it out of there and with a file and all that to get your teeth back, you know, so it doesn't fill the teeth in. But you want to be really careful that you don't fill those in with glue. So I'm just sprinkling a very little bit around the joint where the gear meets the shaft. And I'm going to get a little bit, be getting a little bit on the shaft that I'll have to scrape off later, but that's not that big of a deal. I can scrape that off. It's getting it in the teeth that's a problem. If you get it in the teeth, then you know, it's still, like I said, the same way with cracking the gear in half. It's not necessarily the end of the world, but it just makes more work. I'm just trying to sprinkle a little bit of this powder on there. Right there where the gear, just where the gear meets the shaft. And then I'm just gonna do my best to put one wee little bitty drop on there on each side, because that stuff runs around there and you end up making a mess if you're not careful. This stuff is really thin. That should do it. Because you don't want to get too much on there and have it run into the teeth. And I'll put a little bitty drop on this side. Because the last time I did one of these, I have another engine that's a Pennsylvania lifelike, and it's identical to this. And I did get glue in the teeth, and it was a bear to get the glue out of there after it had dried. Just trying to pick that up so it doesn't lay in spot and make sure I didn't mess up my teeth. No, that looks good. Hold it up to the light and I can see through them, and it didn't get any glue in the teeth, so we should be good there. And it won't take long for that thing to dry, and you know, I mean, almost instantaneously in 10 seconds it bonds, but you know, I don't want to take any chances. I want to let it make sure it's good and dry, good and hardened. And then we'll have to I'll take my pocket knife and go around the shaft on both sides of the gear and clean any excess glue off, which there always is, and hopefully get it working. Okay, now I'm back. I waited for this to dry really well before continuing on. I know it's super glue, but I just want to make sure that that's completely dry before I go trying to scrape or do anything more to it. You know, even though they say that stuff dries instantly, it doesn't really. I mean, there's some of it that may be inside the down inside the repair that's still wet, and you go digging into it, then you have problems. So I like to make sure I give it an adequate amount of time to dry. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to take this pocket knife and scrape it off. And just take and kind of work along the. There again. You got to be kind of experienced with a knife and be careful of your fingers. Just work slowly. Don't push too hard. Although, if you're a modeler or anything, you pretty much got to be expected. You're gonna get. You tend to get injured every once in a while. You know, no really good project really goes all the way through without sacrificing a little bit of blood. It's just par for the course. It seems to be coming off pretty well there, just kind of scraping along around there, scraping the glue off, because there are two bushings that need to ride on the outside edge of this shaft. So it has to be cleaned off right up to the edge of the gear pretty much. And then, because I actually have another locomotive identical to this, except it's, I mean, it's not identical, it's the same thing, but it's just painted different colors, and it was actually made by a lifelike. It's a lifelike Pennsylvania 260 Pennsylvania Mogul, and you can tell it's made by the exact same manufacturer over in China. I bought these both back in around 1990, and you see these on eBay. People list them brand new in the box, never been opened, you know, untested, whatever, taken out of the box just to take the pictures. Well, be wary of those, because these gears cracked sitting in the box. I mean, just because they've never been run, you know, the thing's 25 years old, and just sitting in the box, these cracks appeared. I bought them in 1990, Christmas of 1990, and packed them away, put them away. Have never run them since then. I just ran them a little bit at Christmas that year, both sets, because I got them on sale or whatever, you know, right after Christmas, and had gotten them very cheaply. And then after that, I moved and just never set my train set back up again. And just recently sort of got back into them, got them out yesterday, and neither one of them would run, and they ran fine when I put them away. So just because they advertise brand new in the box and has never been opened, be wary, because this could have happened. Now mine did spend some time in an attic that wasn't really temperature controlled. It got hot, you know, in the summer and cold in the winter, and that could have had a contributing factor to the cracking of these gears. But other than this gear, they run fine. But this gear will put it out of commission, because if this spins on this shaft, you're not going anywhere. And so if you're looking at buying any of these older toys, you know, stuff that, although if this was a lot older, from the 60s, this gear would have been metal. You wouldn't have this problem. But since in the 90s, they were starting to send them over to China, make them over in China, and make them cheaper or whatever, you know, this is the result. They get old, they crack, and yeah, what'll probably happen is I'll fix this and get it running and put it away for another 20 years, and either me, if I'm still around, or whoever will get it out, and another one will be cracked. But whatever, I'll get it running for now. So I pretty much have that. I think I have that cleaned off. As you can see, I scraped off. There was a little bit of glue around the edges of this shaft where the gear mounts in the middle. You're bound to get a little bit on there, and I just had to clean that off. There are two bushings that go on either side of the shaft, and they have to be able to go the other way. They have to be able to fit on there and spin, and I think we've got plenty of room. So this gear can spin in between, and then the two wheels are pressed on. I'm not going to glue those on there because they're metal. They're not going to crack. They didn't crack, because you have to be able to adjust them a little bit in order to get the drive rods, these drive rods, to line up and everything. You have to do that after you assemble it. Otherwise, you're going to have problems with that binding. So I can't glue the wheels on, and I shouldn't have to, because they're metal, and they'll still press on the ends as tight as they were from the factory, and they'll be as good as they were. But the problem with this gear was it was pressed on there. You know, the hole in the center was designed so that it would fit very tightly on this shaft and grip, you know, so it wouldn't spin. Well, then when it cracked, it made it loose so it could turn, and then it wasn't delivering any power to the drive wheels. It would just spin on the shaft. So I'm recapping what I've done. So what I did was drill out the center hole larger, so that I can put it on there without the teeth spreading apart where the crack is, and then I glued it to the shaft. So this does work. I've done it on, I mean, it should work. I replaced those two new bright battery powered train sets that I have up on YouTube, videos of them going around this table. I had to fix both of those, And this crazy buggy, these two gears on the outside were both cracked off, and there was also a gear on the inside similar to this, was a drive gear similar to the one that I'm doing on this locomotive. It was also cracked. I had to glue it on the shaft. So I use this quick bond stuff, or Q-bond stuff. Got it on Amazon, and it works great. I mean, I think it's a a miracle worker. I mean, it's really done well. So. Okay, now I'm going to put this shaft back together. Just in case any of you people happen to be working on this exact same locomotive, this is what you're going to be seeing. I have to put these two bushings that came off the center. You can see where the, if you can see that or not, the, it goes, that's the center set of wheels, and they go inside these drive shafts. So I have to put these little bushings on either side of this gear, put them back on, those back on, and then just press the wheels on the outside. I have here's the one wheel, and I just press it on there. It's going to be kind of tricky to get started. And then the other one on the other side. And of course, you don't want to put too much pressure at once, because it'll do that, come apart, and then you end up run the risk of breaking something. Just got to be real careful, because even though that gear is glued on there pretty good, I don't want to put too much pressure on it. I don't want to take a chance on breaking it off, and then I have to do this again. Holding well enough to drive this train is quite a bit different than holding well enough for my big hands pushing on it. So, you know, it's not gonna really receive that much stress in its regular usage, not like it would with what I'm doing right here. So you got to be really careful pushing these back together. Let's see. And sometimes just turning it will do it. A little bit of trouble on there. I don't want to put any grease on it. Well, so that just goes to show that these wheels are going to hold. And once I do get them on there, they're not going to spin. Something in there. Don't want that to get in the way and stuff. Maybe just a little bit of glue on the edge there, on the end of the shaft. Careful. And just kind of push them together. It's a little tricky. There, I just put them down on the table, and that helped. And the way this thing's made, the ends of the shaft are a different diameter than the middle. It's kind of so you can't push them on too far. They'll only go on so far, and then that's it. So I have to put these down inside here, and getting these lined up on. Kind of got to do a little bit of adjusting as getting them lined up in the proper spot is a little tricky, but they pretty much have to be, I'm noticing, pretty much right above each other. And I said there's a little bit of, I have the. Okay, now I'm, let's see, I keep putting my, there, I changed the angle of the camera so you might be able to see this better now. But anyway, it's the middle shaft that I was working on. There has the gear in the middle there, and then I pushed these two bushings. They go with the flange end in up against the gear, and then I pressed the two wheels on. Now what we have to do is line it up on the drive holes, the holes on the drive shaft, and there's going to be some adjusting to the position of the wheels where they're pressed on that shaft, because they have to be pretty much straight. Some of it I'll have to do when I put it back on the locomotive and just do a little bit of adjusting. These are kind of tricky because they're small. Got to kind of get this, get that screw in there. I know my hand's blocking the way, so you can't really see. Just really can't get it any other way. Those little bitty screws, and then I just take a pair of needle nose pliers and turn them. Let's see, I have to make sure I'm turning it the right way. No, that was the right way before. I'll turn the wheel counterclockwise and hold the screw still so it goes clockwise. They go in a little ways. You'll see them start to protrude on the other side. They don't have to be torqued down really, really tight. It just has to hold the shaft in place. You want some play on there, some looseness. You know, you can just judge by how the other, since we never even took the other two apart, just judge by where they are, you know, how much play and how tight they are, and make the ones on the wheel, the center wheel that you're putting back in, make them about the same. Okay, and so the reason why, because we're going to have to adjust it still a little bit. We'll put the other side in, but we're going to have to move those, turn those wheels. That's why I couldn't glue them to the shaft. We'll have to turn them on that shaft in order to adjust them for the alignment of the drive shafts. If this were a diesel and you didn't have these drive shafts, you could just glue the wheels on. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt. But since this has to be able to be adjusted, you know, and you don't really need to. As you can see, whenever I put those on, when I was putting the wheels on, they fit tight enough that they're gonna hold. I'm just trying to get this thing started. It's a little tricky to get these little, especially with my big fingers, to get these things started. I tried to change the angle on the camera so you'd be able to see it a little better. Because trying to do a video and actually do the job at the same time is a little different. Okay, turn that screw in. Change the angle again, maybe that's even a little bit better, I don't know. I'm trying to, as soon as I touch it, hand is in the way. Anyway, I've almost got it done. The most important part is the gear, is getting that gear repaired. Most anybody who would even attempt this, you know, should be able to do the rest of it. Okay, I'll see how I don't know if you can tell, I'll see how the wheels are kind of crooked. So what you have to do is lay this down and turn them. You got to kind of turn the wheels that were on there until they're straight. And it's a little tricky until they see how that's touching that wheel, so that's not going to be acceptable. It's a little tricky. Because you know the two front and back wheels are okay. You got to adjust these middle wheels until they're pretty, and that's a little bit better, until they're pretty much spaced right and lined up, because they gotta work in unison on the engine. Now that's probably about as close as I'm gonna get. I don't know if you can tell, they're fairly straight and fairly even right now. So then we got to get ready to put them on the locomotive and I can adjust them even more. And what I always do is try to make it to where, because these screw holes, they have a little bit of play in them. Once I get it on there, I'll turn them to where the front and the back one should be okay, because I didn't take those off. And I'll just turn them to where with no tension, the screw is pretty much riding right in the middle of the hole. And I'm making it worse. There. Let's see. I remember what I just did. So this is it's a little tricky. Just to get it right, and then but I think that ought to be close enough. We'll set them back in the locomotive. Now of course they swing around like this. Go in there. And it's a little tricky to get the push rods back in the holes up in there. They go inside those holes, these two holes right here. You know, these push rods go inside there, and then the wheels lay down in there. Doing it all, you almost need 3 hands. But I managed to get them in there and then lay that down in the middle, of course. And then these bushings here they're keyed. They're flat on one side, and those grooves kind of ride right down in. So there's a little bit of trickiness getting this stuff back down in here. And of course, yeah, it takes a little patience. Now, make sure those bushings are back in there, right? Because they are sort of keyed. And such. Okay. Now, see, I like to take and turn these wheels, or just make sure that they make sure there's you know, a little bit of play in there, that you don't have to worry about these push rods binding. And I like to look, and if it's pushed to one side, like that screw hole there, you can see if it's leaning up against one side or the other, I kind of turn the wheel a little bit till it's in the middle. I mean, as you run it, it will sort of adjust itself, and they'll kind of, that's why everything's kind of sloppy, loose on there, so that, you know, that they don't, because they're not really doing anything. It's working in reverse to what a real steam engine would work. The wheels are driving the push rods, not the other way around. So anyway, let's put this cover back on. Put the screws back in it. And with, like I said, if you're working on this very locomotive, there's an arrow on the front of this little cover on the bottom, points toward the front, and that tells you which side of that cover, which end of that cover goes toward the front of the locomotive. And now all there is left to do is try it out, see if she works. Actually, one thing I forgot to do, since I'm doing the video, I just wasn't thinking. that center gear since and probably should lubricate the rest of it too, but I mean definitely that center one, since I had that soaked in alcohol and all that to clean it off. It's completely dry, so I want to just put a little bit. Don't overdo it. These things don't need a ton of oil. Just a little bit of oil on these. This is it. This is precise oil. I think I bought this at Radio Shack. Precision electronic oil, and just a little bit. That's all you need. Yeah. I know a lot of people make mistakes of glomming on there or pouring it in there. It's just a little bit. Just a little dab is all. Little dab will do you, just like Brill cream. Okay, now all we need to do is try it out and see if it works. I put it back together and everything, and I got a train hooked up to it, and we'll see if she goes. See if it stays on the track. We've got this track set up on this table. It's kind of a hard surface and tends to move when you're running around there. But there she goes, one lap. So I got it running. So that's how you would fix your Model Power. Number 605 at ATSF locomotive. They were made in Mateo, I think, I'm sorry, no, made in Macau, which is I think a Republic of China, back in the early 90s. Like I said, this thing was just sitting in storage for well, what, 25 years, and 24, 25 years, and that gear cracked, just sitting in storage. So if you're looking at any of these on eBay or anything and it says new in box, never opened, beware, because just because it hasn't been opened doesn't mean it's not going to have problems, and you're going to need to do repairs to it. So because those nylon gears sitting in in temperature changes and whatever over time, they'll just crack sitting there even if it's not being run. So I've got that running again for now. Well, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.